Imagine if there was one place to learn and gather all the tools you need to design, build, and launch a new business. At UTD, entrepreneurship is seen everywhere on campus. From the makerspace to the LaunchPad to the classroom, UTD is a place where ideas grow into big ideas, and where innovators grow into entrepreneurs. It's one of the most diverse learning communities in the nation that has the largest university startup competition in North Texas. Visit innovation.utdallas.edu to learn more about our programs at the Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs start here.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are so excited to have you join us for Idea Pop during Weeks of Welcome as you settle in for a very exciting fall semester. I'm your host, Dresden Goldberg, the Director of Programs and Operations for the Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. If you have any questions throughout the program, please enter them in the chat, and our moderator, Denise Carpio, will ensure that they are answered. Now, to get us started, I would like to introduce you to Paul Nichols, the Executive Director of the Institute, to share an overview of some of the resources available to you at UT Dallas. Paul?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us and sharing part of your afternoon with us today. So the Institute is actually a strategic effort for UT Dallas. We are a campus-wide institute serving all students from all backgrounds. We are absolutely a resource for our students, our faculty, even our alumni, and for the region of North Texas. And we won numerous awards and national recognition for all the programs that we do and all the courses that we offer. And just so you know, entrepreneurship is in the DNA of UT Dallas. UTD was actually founded by entrepreneurs, the founders of Texas Instruments. So our institute is actually composed of three different pillars: the academics, all the courses we offer through the Jindal School of Management, and then the technology commercialization efforts that we do in cooperation with the Office of Research, and then the programs that we offer through the Blackstone LaunchPad. Now, for our academics, we're actually ranked very highly nationwide. The Princeton Review rates our undergraduate program as number 13 in the country, and our graduate program is 15th. But overall, we're actually ranked number 6 because we're top 20 in both. Most universities tend to focus on either undergraduate or graduate programs, whereas we focus on both equally. For our undergraduates, we offer a business administration concentration as part of the Bachelor's of Science degree available at the Jindal School of Management. We also offer a minor that any UTD student can take. And the majority of our courses are actually available to you as electives, so you can customize your degree, whether you're a student at the Jindal School of Management or an engineering student or a science or arts and humanities student. Then we also offer a graduate degree, a master's in innovation and entrepreneurship. And there are 2 tracks that people can choose from: the corporate innovation track or the new ventures and entrepreneurship small business track. But like I said earlier, we're also part of the Office of Research, which is now doing over $120 million annually in research and development here at UT Dallas. UTD is also pioneering a very simple and investor-attractive intellectual property licensing and ownership policy for students and for faculty and alumni who want to work with UT Dallas in developing new technologies. We also have the Venture Development Center. This is our incubator space on campus, which we have had to expand 3 times due to its popularity. This is a place where people can come and help set up their startup companies with specialized laboratory space, conference rooms, offices, and cubicles. And it's only available to UTD students, faculty, alumni, and those companies that are working with UTD to develop new technology. And just right off the presses, we're very proud to announce that one of UTD's spinout companies, Circe Therapeutics, has recently been acquired. This is just right off the presses from today and yesterday's news. The acquisitions are for over $52 million, with up to $887 million in additional development and milestones. So we are incredibly proud of Cersei Therapeutics and the team behind them, and all the new technology they've developed to help create a new class of drugs that'll be very competitive to the opioid medication that's currently available. We also have a number of strategic partnerships, like with Blackstone, which you're going to hear about today, and Techstars, and also with Capital Factory, which is the most active venture capital firm in the state of Texas. We also have a number of initiatives underway with our sister institutions at UT Southwestern and UT Arlington. So that's a very quick overview of the Institute, and I'm going to hand it back over to Dresden to talk about all of our non-academic programs that we do throughout the year, just like Idea Pop, and we hope you'll be able to join us for those as well. Thank you again for joining us today. Have a great day.
Thank you, Paul, for that introduction. Now I'm going to go into a bit more about the programs that we'll be offering. In addition to programs and operations, I'm also the campus director of the Blackstone LaunchPad and Techstars network at UT Dallas. Being a part of this network has given us access to many resources like programming support, mentors, and ambassadors. Some of you may have had a chance to visit the LaunchPad on campus. It's near the new Taco Bell and the Einstein Bagels. It's a beautiful 5,000 square foot facility with conference rooms, mentor offices, and a larger classroom or event space that you can use. The LaunchPad also offers students co-working space so that you have a professional place to work when you're working on your startup idea. The LaunchPad will be closed this fall, but be sure to check it out once we're able to open again. For fall 2020, we are offering all of our events and programs virtually. We have a bi-weekly series called Lab to Lunch that takes place every other Monday starting August 31st at 12 p.m. This fall, it will focus on a very popular topic, fundraising, so be sure to join us. Both of our accelerator programs, Comet X and Galaxy, run for 8 weeks starting in September and end with a pitch competition in October. We're also offering the Techstars Startup Weekend and the Women's Summit in October. And the biggest event of the year, the Big Idea Competition, takes place in November. And now it's bigger than ever with 3 tracks for students, alumni, and research commercialization. Comet X and Galaxy applications are due August 30th, and the Big Idea Competition applications are due September 20th, so don't miss out. We also offer several different mentoring programs. This fall, mentor meetings will take place virtually by request through the form on our website. Mentor meetings are great for asking questions about your ideas when you're just figuring out the early stages, or if you need specific expertise or guidance, we can help match you with a mentor with the skills to help you. In addition to the UT Dallas Mentor Network, we also have access to the Techstars Mentor Network. So you have plenty of experts available to give advice and guidance on your startup ideas. For startups that are a bit further along, we offer the Venture Mentoring Service of North Texas in partnership with UT Arlington and UT Southwestern. This program matches you with a team of mentors that you get to work with for an extended period of time. Denise has added some important links in the chat, so be sure to visit them for more information. And also, don't forget to submit questions in the chat for a chance to win autographed books from our guest speakers, Claudia and Daron. Next, I would like to introduce you to a special guest. She joined Blackstone in 2019 to manage the Blackstone LaunchPad and Techstars Entrepreneurship Network and currently serves as a director with the Blackstone Charitable Foundation. She has been a wonderful partner to UT Dallas in helping us support the next generation's new ventures. Please welcome to Connie Croma.
Thank you, Dresden, and hi, everyone. I'll start by thanking you for taking the time to tune in, as well as the team at the UT Dallas Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship for organizing this event. I'm thrilled to see all of you here, and it's a testament to the strength of this program and department that so many of you are committed to learning more about entrepreneurship. I would encourage you to use today as not just an opportunity to explore an idea or potential venture, but also as an introduction to the skills, thinking, and mindset of entrepreneurs. Through my work designing and delivering entrepreneurship programs at the Blackstone Charitable Foundation, I found that the skills one develops through ideating around a venture or exploring entrepreneurship as a subject matter is salient across industries. Whether you continue your path as a founder or ideator, or go on to become entrepreneurs within larger firms or startups. Skills like leadership, teamwork, problem solving, resilience, and communication will get you further faster, time and time again, down any career path that you choose. But more on that from the stellar lineup of speakers who can give far more color on that. Instead, I'll use this time to share more about the Blackstone Charitable Foundation. So the foundation was founded in 2007 at the time of the firm's IPO and represents the philanthropic arm of Blackstone. We have two primary functions: the Entrepreneurship Initiative, which runs programs designed to increase access to entrepreneurship resources, content, and programmatic opportunities that typically happen through grant making to inclusive entrepreneurship programs, and primarily the Blackstone LaunchPad and Techstars program. The second primary function occurs through Blackstone Connects, which oversees all our volunteering, board service, and giving on behalf of BX employees and the firm. This includes our firm-wide campaigns like support to COVID-19 relief, primarily in the state of New York, and through the Governor's Fund, which saw the firm galvanize and give up to $20 million this last quarter, to direct service and hunger fighting organizations throughout the city during the worst of the pandemic. But more on LaunchPad. It's our mission through this program that all college students, no matter their starting point, can leverage entrepreneurship skills to build a better future for themselves and for the world, really. And for the last 10 years, LaunchPad has helped over 100,000 students build companies. We're now aiming to reach 1 million students to help them build both companies and careers. As I noted before, we see entrepreneurship as the tool to build these vital skills and best prepare the next generation for better jobs. So we work with colleges and universities to strengthen their entrepreneurial support system for students while building a global professional network for promising young people to tap into. These programs are designed so that students learn by doing, giving them the knowledge and know-how to help them succeed and contribute to what we view as an innovation economy. And it's important to know that all our efforts here are backed by the strength of Blackstone, the firm, our employees who participate through the Campus Ambassador Program, which you'll learn more about shortly, and of course our partners like Techstars. So back in 2008, the foundation partnered with Techstars to deliver content and access to their pool of over 10,000 mentors. For those of you unfamiliar with Techstars, it's a global ecosystem that helps entrepreneurs build businesses. They currently manage over 50 accelerator programs globally. Through our partnership with Techstars, LaunchPad is designed to de-risk entrepreneurship for student founders and really help students build 21st century jobs as they prepare for the workforce. So we do this in one of three ways. First, we complement on-campus experience with proven accelerator content and resources. This also includes mentorship and advising from Blackstone employees across departments, and through our engagement program, the LaunchPad Campus Ambassadors. We catalyze venture growth with connections to sophisticated mentor networks and opportunities that allow students to showcase their ventures on a global scale. So an example of this happened this past January, where we brought together 8 students to pitch their businesses at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, and we participated on a panel with Techstars specific on student entrepreneurship and how to galvanize support there. We also host and convene world-class events designed to expand peer networks and allow students to receive advice from experienced entrepreneurs, and most importantly, to compete for funding. Last fall, we hosted LaunchPad Propel, which featured Neil Blumenthal from Warby Parker, Josh Hicks from Plated as speakers. It also brought together the entire LaunchPad network in a conference, which featured the best and brightest student founders across the LaunchPad network, who all came to New York to participate in a pitch competition and learn from each other. Another example is the LaunchPad Summer Startup Fellowship, which was launched in direct response to the fact that so many students across the country and within the LaunchPad program were losing jobs and internships due to economic fallout from the COVID crisis. In this 8-week fellowship, students received $5,000 in grant funding to support their time working on advancing their startups. For us, the fellowship was an opportunity to support and encourage young entrepreneurs, and taken together was designed to help students take that next step, validate their ideas, and persevere on their journey as entrepreneurs. We found it was important to deliver this summer in particular, given the need and the gap in programming as a result of the pandemic. It also proved an opportunity to demonstrate how philanthropy and the Blackstone Charitable Foundation can be nimble, but also responsive in this space. I could go on forever, but I won't because I know there's a lot of awesome speakers to follow. So I hope that provided a solid overview of what we are, of who we are and what we do. I want to thank you again for taking this time to learn more and explore your interest in entrepreneurship. Up next, we have my colleague, Matt Haberacker. He has over 15 years of experience in the financial services industry, specializing in asset management alternatives and capital markets. He currently oversees enterprise risk assurance and advisory at Blackstone, where he's responsible for the design and implementation of the enterprise risk management program and leads advisory review efforts across the firm's various business lines and functions. He has graciously served as an ambassador of the UT Dallas Blackstone LaunchPad for the past year and really does exemplify the values of Blackstone and also the LaunchPad program. So please welcome Matt Haberacker. Thank you again, everyone.
Thanks, Takani. Thank you all of you for having me here at IdeaPop. As Takani mentioned, I'm Matt Haberacker. I'm a vice president at Blackstone. We're the world's largest manager of alternative investments with over $560 billion in assets under management. In my role, as she mentioned, I oversee risk assurance and advisory services. This requires me and my team to identify, assess, monitor, and report on non-investment risk exposure across the firm. And by non-investment risk, I'm referring to areas such as financial, operations, technology, legal, regulatory, human resources, and our brand and reputation. So in short, we help to identify any icebergs that are out there so that we as a firm can collectively decide on how to address any unintended exposure. My background is heavily geared in consulting and project management. This requires navigating new areas and working with people to put the pieces together to enact various types of change, which brings me to why I'm here with you. Since joining the UT Dallas Blackstone LaunchPad program, I've had the privilege of serving as a judge for the Galaxy Pitch competition, which occurred back in April, and participating in mentoring sessions with individual teams. These efforts allowed me the opportunity to get to learn about these startup ideas and really get to know the people behind them. You know, aside from offering my experience and background, my primary reason for doing this was to have the opportunity to learn from the teams that I've encountered. Ideas aside, the talent, the vision, and the energy that I've seen demonstrated through this program has been incredibly refreshing and inspiring. You know, over time and with experience, sometimes you start to hear more about barriers and hurdles as reasons for not trying something, rather than attempting something new. You've probably heard it before, your idea won't work, it's been attempted before, cost of funding is too high, maybe you're lacking economies of scale. Part of this is predicated on the assumption that past performance is a predictor of future results. Why bother? We've tried it before. Let's just keep doing what we're doing. The thing to keep in mind, though, is that very few paths to success are linear. The more common story is iterative, with many ebbs and flows occurring along the way. This is why I love being part of the LaunchPad program. You and your teams are thinking big without constraints. You're learning how to put your ideas into action. You're navigating and breaking through hurdles instead of submitting to them. And as a risk manager myself, I always like to hear that you're thinking about risk-reward trade-offs. But it's your stories and your journeys as entrepreneurs that inspire me to reflect, think big, and try to do better at my own job. So keep fighting, keep thinking big, keep sharing your experiences. And on behalf of Blackstone, we want to thank you for the opportunity to continue to coach, partner, and learn from you. Sincerely appreciate it. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Dresden.
Thank you so much to Connie and Matt. We have loved working with both of you so far and look forward to your continued support. So now it's time to welcome our first guest speaker to share about how to validate your business idea. She has experience as a founder and CEO, has been recognized as a trailblazer and a woman to watch in technology, and she has invested in several companies in her current role as general manager for Techstars. Please welcome Claudia Reuter.
So hi, again, I'm Claudia Reuter. I'm a general manager at Techstars. Super excited to be here today and have an opportunity to connect with you all. I can go ahead and share my screen. I have a few slides to walk you through some basic concepts on validating your idea. So I know we don't have a ton of time, and I want to make sure we have plenty of time for Q&A also. But just a quick recap. So I am a general manager with Techstars. What we're focused on first and foremost is helping entrepreneurs succeed. To date, we've invested in over 2,000 companies, and we've got some pretty phenomenal stats. So really just please know that we're here at Techstars to help everyone on their journey from start to IPO. As people are thinking about starting the entrepreneurial journey, it's often the first step is thinking, I have a great idea. And some of the first things that many of us tend to think, of course, is that this is an amazing idea. I'm going to make millions. Everyone will want this. And so before you go too far down a path, or before you invest any of your own time or money into this, it's super important to make sure that you validate it, because it might be a great idea, but it might be something that you don't actually want to pursue. So there's a couple of different ways to start validating your idea. How I like to help people think of this is starting to build upon your own story to make things clear. So it'd start with, what problem are you actually trying to solve? And so trying to put it in the framework of a sentence sometimes helps to make this clear very quickly. So for example, I'm going to make blank because it will help or fix blank. So for today, I'd use the example because I think it'll be clear to everyone. Let's say that I had an idea, which of course other people have already had before, but perhaps my idea was to create an online conferencing platform. So I might clarify that I'm solving a problem by saying I'm going to make an online conferencing platform because it will help people connect. And as you're starting to frame or think about the problem that you're solving, it's also important to take a step back and think about the type of problem. You'll notice that on the last slide I had fix or help. It's important to think about, is this problem you're solving something that really requires a painkiller? Is this something that's going to save people time? Is it saving money? Is it helping someone keep a job? Or is it potentially saving a life? Or is it something that's aspirational? Is it something that really needs a vitamin? And being able to distinguish between the two will really help you as you think about your idea and where you're going to take it. An aspirational idea might help people sell more of their product, might help them get to market more quickly. But again, it's important to distinguish if you think it's a painkiller or vitamin. As you start to dig into what problem you're solving, it's important to then start to narrow in on who specifically are you solving this problem for. So going back to that example where we had some blanks here to fill in, if we think about this and say, okay, I'm making an online conferencing platform because it will help people connect. And perhaps that is critical for people who are currently office workers impacted by COVID. And suddenly my aspirational idea starts to look a little bit more like a pain point for certain users. So by honing in on who your customer or potential user is, you start to get a little bit clearer about exactly the type of problem that you're solving. And then I'd move into, why are you the one that's going to do this? What is your unique value proposition? And some of these ideas stem from the Lean Canvas methodology, which I'll share a slide on at the end of this presentation because it's worth digging into, and we have some great resources in an entrepreneurial toolkit you guys can access. But as you start to dig into this a little bit more and build upon your idea, you say, okay, I'm making, and in this example, an online conferencing platform because it will help people connect. And this is critical for people who are impacted by COVID. But then why are you the one who's positioned to do it? Now, I'm not actually a software developer with 15 years experience building online conferencing platforms, but if perhaps this was my idea, I would be well positioned to do this because I'm a software developer with 15 years experience building online conferencing platforms. So you get the idea. The idea is to define the problem you're solving, how it's actually solved, what solution it's for, who specifically your end user might be, and why you're potentially the one to bring this to market. Then I would take one more step. Now you've got some ideas like, I think this is a good idea. I think this might have potential, but try to kill the idea a little bit. Is anyone else already doing this really well? Competition isn't a bad thing, but you need to think about and know how you'll compete. Is your problem really a problem that people are willing to pay for? And what's the opportunity cost for you? So as you get into the next steps of validating your idea, there's a couple of key tactical things you can start to do after you've flushed out some of these core problems that you're solving. One is take a step back and actually just go simply online and search what else is already out there. Remembering that competition is not a bad thing, it actually means that there's a market, but really be aware of what's out there, who they're appealing to and why. take some time and also search trends. And what I mean by that is you can go to tools like trends.google.com and you can actually see what people are searching for. Perhaps you didn't identify any potential competition to your idea, but perhaps tons of people are searching for a tool that would solve this problem for them. That's a great reason to think perhaps you're onto something. And then here's the piece that I think is actually one of the most critical. It's really important to get feedback from as many people as possible. If we were in a non-virtual world right now, I'd highly recommend going to conferences that are in the industry or the area that you're thinking about and simply start to talk to people. Ask them if they would be interested in purchasing a solution like the one you're thinking about developing. Pressure test it with them. Ask them why they wouldn't do it. Ask them what they're already using. One of our managing directors at Techstars, Bruno Morenci, who's up in Montreal, has a great piece of advice when you're thinking about bringing a new product to market. You know, he said, think about if you're about to disrupt a solution that's already in the market, think about the full user experience that's happening before they log into that solution you might disrupt and when they log out. And where can you add value at the edge? Likewise, if you're starting something that no one's ever done before and you validated that, think about how long it might take you or what would be involved in educating the market on why they should use your solution. Send out surveys. That's another great way to elicit feedback. And consider tools like Kickstarter. I put the word caution into this because I certainly don't recommend starting with a Kickstarter until you've taken some time to go through the initial steps, because to actually launch a successful Kickstarter, you might need to make an investment. But when you feel like you're ready, that's actually an interesting way to start to just see if there's any market appetite or validation. And I'd also consider attending other events like Startup Weekend, where you can actually connect with other entrepreneurs to learn more and get their feedback as well. So those are some just high-level ways to start to validate your idea. And again, some of these are coming off of and based on some of the conceptual framework available in the Lean Canvas, which many of you may already be familiar with. And we have some resources available. Zach Nice, who's a managing director at Techstars, has done some great videos on how to build out your business plan using Lean Canvas in your early stages that you can access at the toolkit. And that, again, is a quick overview of knowing the time we're in, of how to validate your idea. And with that, I'd love to open it up to any questions.
Hi, Claudia. We've got a couple questions about your book. Could you go into some brief detail about what you've written about and what it's about?
Sure, absolutely. So I wrote a book called Yes, You Can Do This: How Women Start Up, Scale Up, and Build the Life They Want. Because I actually stepped out of the world of work many years ago. And when I went to re-enter the workforce, I realized that the options I had in front of me were more limited than I thought that they might have been. And I was also always of an entrepreneurial mindset and ended up building my own company. And over time, I realized that that decision really propelled me into leadership in a way that I don't think I would have had an opportunity to step into in the traditional workforce at that moment in time. And so we often talk about entrepreneurship as a path to, IPO or to create the next thing. And all of those things are true. And all of those are great reasons and the important reasons to start a business, because you're adding value to the economy. But I think it's important for people to think about entrepreneurship as also a step into leadership, and you gain a set of experiences when you start your own company that you might not otherwise have. And so I tried to outline in the book some ways in which simply taking those steps can lead to some really interesting career opportunities.
Great, thanks, Claudia. We also have actually a bunch of questions, but primarily right now, actually, as I switch screens. So in today's day and age of technology just kind of amping up near constantly, sometimes it seems like coming up with an idea, even for someone who's super motivated, can be difficult. So what would you recommend as steps or ways to come up with an original idea that hasn't been done before or done too many times even?
I think some of the best ideas, or the ones that people really stick with, are ones that are based on personal challenges an entrepreneur faced. So whether that's, you're just you're using a software platform and you're identifying that there must certainly be a better, easier way to do this. Perhaps you have a manual process that you're encountering. I know when I was starting my company, I was actually trying to build things using paper and binders, and realized, hey, this is actually where software comes in pretty handy. So thinking about the problems that you encounter, whether they're in your daily workflow experience, whether they're maybe outside of that, but looking at the problems that you encounter, and if it's bothering you enough that you think you want to try to tackle it, that's a great place to start for ideas. And if you're looking to see what else external is out there, again, sometimes, if you think there might be an opportunity in a given market or a given place, going back and interviewing people who are in that space is a great way to understand what are some of the challenges they're experiencing, and you might come up with some great ideas that can help them solve that.
Great, thank you. So here's another one. If you have an innovative idea and you do have customers, but they seem to be just kind of random people, not a specific definable audience, how do you validate who exactly your customer is?
So, there's a couple of different things to consider there. When you think about the problem, I think this is why we start with what is the problem that you're solving, and then narrow down into, why is your solution the solution, and then who is it the solution for? As you drill into that, you will start to identify a customer segment. Even when you're thinking about an aspirational one, like for example, if you have a solution that might help people achieve their ideal weight, that's an idea you might have, like, I'm going to build an app that's going to help people track and manage their weight and health statistics. Well, then you can start to hone in and say, well, let me do some research and figure out who are the people that are most likely to want this type of solution, people in, and you can start to look at, gym membership in certain areas, different things that are out there. So I think if you've really identified a problem and you've really honed in on the specific, user or the person for whom you're providing that solution, you'll start to identify a class of folks who would be interested in your product or idea.
Oh, great. So another question, how would you recommend assessing how much of an advantage your idea has over your competition?
So again, a lot of this goes into a few different areas. A lot of this comes into asking people what their experience is. So let's say that you come up with a solution for a new CRM, like a new version of Salesforce or customer relationship management tool. One, you yourself might want to go check out the competition software, log in, create an account, understand how they're approaching or solving the problem, find customers that, or people who might be using that service right now, and ask them, hey, what's working for you with this? What's not working for you with this? And you can start to gauge through surveys and questioning, how satisfied people are. Again, if you're, I think Zoom actually right now is another great example of a solution that's really taken off because of COVID. There's been a number of online tools obviously available for a number of years, but we suddenly saw a lot of adoption on a technology because it sort of had many of the features that people were after. It doesn't preclude someone else from coming into the market, but it does require someone to do the diligence to talk to people who signed up for something for free or are using it regularly and understand why they're using it, what's working for them, and that should give you an idea of if there's an opportunity there or not from a customer perspective. And then, of course, from a market perspective, you can certainly look and take a peek online and look at different companies' websites and get an idea of how big they might be. You can go to sites like Crunchbase and see how much money different companies have raised. That's just one data point. It doesn't necessarily mean it's not an area to explore, but it's just, really at the idea stage. You should think of it as much of an idea stage as an information gathering stage.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, so you mentioned painkillers and vitamins. Do you feel that vitamin markets are more sustainable?
No, I mean, I think that it really just depends on what what you're trying to do. So the idea of a painkiller, a market or an opportunity or idea for a pain that requires a painkiller is the idea that you have a path to market that's understood based on a pain point that someone or a business is willing to pay money for. So the idea would be, for example, when it's tax time, I think a lot of people are pretty familiar with tools like TurboTax. TurboTax solves a pain point for customers, right? People don't need to go manually, use pen and paper to figure out their taxes. They can simply use an online tool. So that's an example of a solution that's solving a pain point for a customer. Like an aspirational solution or product would be one that maybe has more broader consumer appeal, but it's not necessarily something that someone has an absolute critical need to solve for today. Like the example of an app that maybe helps you manage your weight or lose weight. No one actually has a government requirement to lose weight, right? There's not something that's requiring you to use that product, but if your aspirational offering may align with a goal that they have, which may make it likely to sell. So it's not that one is better or worse, but typically if you can look at both in terms of how do I ensure that my product or solution becomes sticky to this market that I'm going after, meaning do I have an idea that people are going to renew year over year for one that has solving for a pain point? That might be because there's some sort of government regulation or bigger reason that they have to keep going with it. So you're going to continue to refine it for that, with that in mind. For aspirational, it may be that you've created a solution that's creating such great results for them that they would be disinclined to actually cut off the app. So just thinking about how you ensure that your solution is sticky regardless.
Thank you. We've got time for just one more question, although we've had a bunch come through. How do you recommend surveying people without giving away your ideas?
I mean, I think that you'll find, first of all, that everyone, ideas are plentiful. So, unless you have, depending on what you're working on, right? But for the most part, it's really important to ask people questions about, if you think you're solving a problem in a specific space, ask questions about the problem. And the way to do that, let's say you don't want to reveal exactly what your solution is yet. You don't need to do that at the beginning. You could just continue to ask questions that refine the problem and ask them how they're currently solving for it. So for example, let's say you were the person who thought of TurboTax. You might, have inquired with a bunch of people around, before tax time came up and said, how are you managing your taxes right now? Are there any solutions that you're using? Do you wish that you had access to something that would make it easier? So you can frame questions in such a way that you're certainly not revealing all of your best, competitive edges, but you can get enough information to validate if what you're about to launch would at least match what you're hearing in the field.
Thank you so much, Claudia. That was great. We really appreciate it. We did have a few questions that we weren't able to get to, so we may be following up with you to get those answered through email for everyone following up after the event. So next, we're going to introduce you to the Entrepreneurship Club at UT Dallas and some of our Comet entrepreneurs. She's an undergrad student at UTD majoring in cognitive science with a focus in neuroscience and artificial intelligence. She's involved with the Institute and the Blackstone LaunchPad, where she helped build a community of students and startup mentors actively working together on their entrepreneurial journeys. She currently serves as the head of operations for the E-Club. Please welcome Harshini Ralapalli.
Thank you, Dresden. Hi, everyone. At E-Club, we're a student-led organization passionate about building a community of entrepreneurs with the Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And getting to do so has honestly been one of the best highlights of my college journey. We operate with this aim to create a space where students and mentors collaborate to create and help each other transform, empower, and break barriers within their own journeys. Over the past year, we've grown so much as a club, as a team, and most importantly, as individuals, rising up to the situation to strengthen the entrepreneurship spirit within UT Dallas, within our own personal network, and most importantly, within our community. And furthermore, we're actually collaborating with e-clubs internationally to do the same. And in fact, here's a recap of our year presented by Sarah Romanko, a fellow e-club lead.
Hello everyone, my name is Sarah Romanko and I am a part of the e-club leadership team. This past year, we've expanded our membership reach to ensure collaboration across the 8 different schools at UT Dallas, while also connecting students to the Dallas startup community. From monthly fireside chats to creating the first ever club-run podcast, The Up and Coming, we were able to grow our community of mentors and student entrepreneurs. This club has truly made an impact on my college experience and my career, and we welcome all majors to take a chance and share their big ideas. Join the UT Dallas entrepreneurship community, where we aim to help each other in any way we can.
Thank you, Sarah. Our community has some of the best common entrepreneurs, and I'd like to take this time to highlight 3 of them and their big ideas. They are Rohit Shenoy from Campus Oven, KU Cal from Sani Scanner, and Varka Pinham from IDA. First up, let's hear about Campus Oven from Rohit.
Thank you, Harshini. My name is Rohit Shenoy, and I'm one of the co-founders of Campus Oven. So Campus Oven really came about from a problem that me and my co-founders experienced on our college campus, which was that frankly, the college food experience sucks. So first off, the price of food on college campuses is way higher than what it should be. And this is mainly because colleges have realized that they have essentially a semi-trapped audience of students who find it pretty hard to get off campus and buy every single one of their meals, or go off campus, go to the grocery store, and be able to cook every single one of their meals. And on top of that, a lot of the food options that students have are generally pretty unhealthy. So think about your burgers and fries at the dining hall, or your fast food restaurants like Chick-fil-A and Panda Express. And so what we really wanted to solve was this problem of making healthy food a lot more affordable and accessible for college students. The way we solved this really was in 2 parts. On one end, we realized that we can kind of use the same principle of a lot of students living pretty close to each other and aggregating all their meal orders to just do one delivery to campus. So this way we could save them a lot of money on delivery costs and pass on those savings to the students. The second part of it was, instead of partnering with restaurants like traditional food delivery companies, we partner with caterers and chefs who work out of ghost kitchens. And so that way we can save a lot of money on food costs because we're not paying all the additional overhead expenses for restaurants. And so we can, again, pass on those savings to students. So by combining these 2 parts of college campuses and caterers, we created a marketplace and built the logistics, marketing, and tech needed to make everything possible. We started the company in February at our university, University of Texas, Dallas, and we were able to do deliveries in the months of February and March before obviously COVID shut down our university. And in that time frame, we were able to deliver over 1,000 meals, did over 10K in revenue, partnered with 6 DFW area caterers, and developed a scalable automated web platform for people to order off of. And then after COVID hit, we helped out with the crisis by delivering meals to frontline workers. So we were delivering meals to most of the doctors and nurses in DFW hospitals. And then since then, we pivoted to doing meal delivery to work from home employees who lost their food benefits at the office. And now that we finally know what's happening with university campuses, we're back to doing campus deliveries and are particularly excited about the opportunity ahead of us. And this is because food was a huge problem on college campuses even before COVID hit. But now with COVID in the mix, students are going to be a lot more uncomfortable going to the dining hall or going to the on-campus restaurants to buy their meals. So now we can offer them a solution that delivers healthy and affordable food straight to their doorstep in a very safe way, which is something that students really need right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Rohit. Up next, our next common entrepreneur is KU Cal from Sani Scanner.
Thank you, Harshini. Hi, everyone. My name is KU Cal, and I'm one of the co-founders of Sani Scanner. Our mission is to develop a UV sanitation system for retail checkouts in order to create a safer shopping experience for both shoppers and staff. Sani Scanner was inspired by the increased awareness of public health in the wake of the COVID-19 outbreak. As frequent shoppers, our founding team identified checkout counters as a choke point of potential contamination in stores, which hundreds of individuals have to interact with each day. Furthermore, studies show that checkout conveyors are one of the most heavily infected surfaces you can encounter in public. Our solution is to harness the power of UVC, which is a type of light with strong germicidal properties against a wide variety of pathogens. Our device uses this UVC light to scan items as they pass through the checkout conveyor belt. thereby reducing the infectivity rates of bacteria and viruses on both purchase items and the conveyor surface. By doing so, we hope to help reduce preventable hospital visits and alleviate the strain on our healthcare system while restoring consumer confidence in physical retailers. Now, two key factors a startup needs are funding and expertise, and UTD resources have been very useful in helping us attain both. Back in April, Sandy Scanner was little more than an idea without the resources to become a reality. I was reading the weekly newsletter from the UTD Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship and came across the announcement for the Safe Schools Grant, which is a collaboration between UTD, SMU, and RevTech Ventures in order to fund solutions for a safer return to campus. I decided to apply for the grant to see whether my idea had any merit. When we were accepted as one of 5 student teams for the Safe Schools Grant, I knew Sandy Scanner had the potential to grow. Encouraged by our progress, I applied for another opportunity listed in the newsletter and managed to secure the LaunchPad Summer Startup Fellowship, sponsored by Blackstone LaunchPad and Techstars. Both these programs hosted workshops and speakers on relevant business topics such as change management and design thinking, which was very educational for me as a first-time entrepreneur from an engineering background. They also provided access to a rich network of industry experts and mentors. We had the opportunity to speak with 2 mentors in the healthcare sector about UV regulations, and we also received valuable material science advice from Dr. Quevedo, the head of UTD's Material Science Department. As our UTD point of contact for both programs, Dresden Goldberg has connected us with many of these mentors and resources, and has helped us with developing our outreach strategy and with distributing our market research survey. Thanks to support from UTD and these programs, Sandy Scanner had the resources to begin prototyping and testing a UV sanitation device over the summer. We look forward to making further progress over the coming months.
Thank you, KU. Our next comment entrepreneur is Mark Pinham from IDA.
Verika, you're on mute.
Okay.
We can hear you now. And now you're back unmuted.
Okay, hello. I'm sorry about that. Technology issues. Hey everyone, I'm Verika and I'm a co-founder of IDA, which stands for Ideate, Decide, Act. And our mission is to make entrepreneurship more accessible for the millions of female founders who face challenges daily. IDA is a digital platform for women-owned small businesses with mentors, funding opportunities, and resources available on a membership basis. And IDA was created after my sister and I came to realize that our past experiences working with female founders illustrated all the struggles they face with getting the right support and resources despite the myriad of opportunities out there. Research shows that 48% of female founders report lacking mentorship, and over 73% face capital issues, among many other things. So IDA seeks to solve this by offering the benefits of a virtual accelerator through a membership model that can be accessed by anyone, anywhere, in any stage. Our solution is to use a web and mobile app to track the progress of founders and offer resources and matches to mentors, investors, and other entrepreneurs. And to date, we've formed partnerships, acquired users, and are progressing through the MVP stage. The founding of IDA and my entry into the startup world is all thanks to the Blackstone LaunchPad and Techstars. As a sophomore student, I participated in the first cohort of Galaxy to learn more about entrepreneurship. And I remember feeling really nervous to pitch at the end of the program because I had nothing more than a deck. But I was really encouraged to do so. And I'm glad I did because I surprisingly placed 3rd at the time. And that helped us create IDA and register it and gave us a push to move forward. UTD has been really instrumental in my development as a student entrepreneur. And because of the Launchpad, I've been able to attend Startup Weekend at UCLA and pitch as a finalist at the BIC and the Perot Museum, get really amazing mentors through Venture Services, take startup classes with other student founders, and most recently participate in the Launchpad Summer Fellowship. These opportunities have provided me with access to incredible expert speakers and mentors on various topics and have helped to grow IDA further. Most importantly, UTD has helped me feel supported and connected to the startup ecosystem of Dallas and be motivated in this journey overall. And as the campus Launchpad director, Dresden has also been so helpful and hands-on over the past year and a half. So I'm really grateful for that because she's reached out on several occasions to point me towards the right opportunities. And I appreciate how everyone at the Launchpad has made this happen and taken the time to get to know student startups at UTD personally. So I really do think the trajectory of my entire college experience has changed due to UTD's innovation and entrepreneurship programs. And I'm looking forward to making the most of my last year here and what's next for IDA.
Thank you, Varga. Well, those are all of our common entrepreneurs that we have time to introduce today. Please don't forget to check out eClub. Our kickoff event is going to be on September 1st at 7 p.m. The information for the meeting is going to be in the chat. And so see you there. Thank you again.
Thank you so much to Harshini, the eClub, and all of our common entrepreneurs for joining us today. Next, we're going to welcome one of our resident startup experts. He's the VP of Capital Factories Accelerator and a general partner in the Capital Factories VC Fund. He helped to establish the Blackstone LaunchPad and the UT Dallas Seed Fund. He actively advises students, entrepreneurs, and early stage ventures, and serves as a member of the entrepreneurship faculty here at UT Dallas. Please welcome Brian Chambers.
All right, good afternoon, UT Dallas. What a fascinating time it is to be a student. And if you're like me, you might be obsessing about the opportunities unfolding right in front of your very eyes. There's never been, in my opinion, a more exciting time to explore starting a business. There are so many resources, as you've heard, there's so many resources available to help student and alumni startups. One of those being the UT Dallas Seed Fund, a super cool experiential course where a team of students gain entrepreneurial insights by recommending real startup investment opportunities. A bit like Shark Tank, but you get to play the shark. We funded 7 UT Dallas startups to date in 3 years, and we've worked with dozens of students. But if there's one thing you should take away from today, it's to put your idea into motion by applying for the Big Idea competition. It's a fantastic event, and I've watched it change so many students and friends' lives. The deadline to apply, as a reminder, is September 20th, and you can access all of those details for the Big Idea competition and the UT Dallas Seed Fund at innovation.utdallas.edu under the Programs tab. And I certainly hope to see you there. But now I'm very excited to introduce you to one inspiring guy. After graduating from Harvard Law School, he served coaching stints with the Kansas City Chiefs, the Detroit Lions, the West Virginia Mountaineers, and the Cleveland Browns. He launched a nonprofit football camp called 4th and 1 to provide SAT prep and life skills to football training for at-risk youth across several different states. He now serves as the founding director of the Center for Sports Leadership and Innovation at the University of Texas at Austin. Daron teaches a game plan for winning at life and does that to over 400 student freshmen, athletes at the University of Texas at Austin. He's been featured by ESPN, Bloomberg Business Week, and Sports Illustrated, just to name a few. He's here with us today to share some insights on the art of risk-taking. Please help me welcome Daron K. Roberts.
Well, thank you so much, Brian. I need to pay you to travel with me, and I really appreciate your introduction, and it's exciting to be here. I think this is, for us here at the University of Texas, it's our first day back on campus, and people are excited, and one of the things that excites me the most about the university setting and just this time period is that there's such an immense amount of disruption and opportunities for growth and for capitalizing on this new economy. And so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you just a brief sort of sketch of my life, bring you up to the present tense. I'll start at Genesis and then we'll work our way upwards. And then what I want to do is take as many questions as possible, because I think the real value in so much of what we do is in this Q&A period. So I'm a 5th generation East Texan, born and raised in Mount Pleasant, Texas. My dad at the age of 7 takes me to a cemetery, and I walk in and he shows me this tombstone, and it's of my great-great-grandfather. And so my great-great-grandfather was born in 1840, died in 1912. And this is a man for whom our first real memory of him and record of him in history comes through a census tract taken in 1870. And so then in 1870, it shows that there were 170 acres owned by Bill Roberts. Now, obviously, we should know, I know some people may be enrolled in history now, that the Civil War ended in 1865. And so the fact that this man was able to accumulate 170 acres within 5 years is extraordinary. And my dad told me, he said, listen, this is the reason why you will never have any excuses. And so I go on throughout life. I get to age 10 and my dad says, I need you to set a goal for your life. Who do you want to be? What do you want to be when you grow up? And so he says, I said, well, Dad, what do you mean a goal? He says, well, what do you want to do with your life? So we had just taken a trip to Austin. And so I said to him, I said, look, Dad, I want to be the governor of Texas. And so he sort of looks at me and he says, okay, by what age? And I said, just pick the number, age 40. Now I turned age 40 last year. So obviously I took a wrong turn somewhere, but that was the dream. I go to Mount Pleasant Independent School District schools, come to the University of Texas in 1997. And I was afraid as a freshman. So the University of Texas at the time had 50,000 undergraduates. That's 4 times the size of my small town. On a typical Saturday in which we play football, you could fit 9 Mount Pleasants into Daron K Royal Memorial Stadium. And so it took me a while to befriend mentors, to find my direction. And I was fortunate to be student government president my last year. So at that time, and we'll get to this point around risk taking, I was still a believer in a linear plan. So if A, then B, if B, then C. And so on my plan, the next plot was to go to Harvard Law School. I apply to Harvard Law School, don't get accepted, don't get rejected. I get that letter that's right there in the middle called the dreaded waitlist letter. All right. And so I'll just paraphrase what was in that letter. Dear Daron, we like you. Unfortunately, we like so many more people more than we like you. In the very unlikely event that all of those individuals turn us down, we may reach back out to you. But if you have any viable options for law school whatsoever, we highly advise that you take them. With love, Dean of Admissions, Joyce P. Curl. And so I was distraught. I spent 3 days in sackcloth and ashes walking across campus, and a mentor called me up and he said, listen, I know you're down about Harvard Law School, but I got a job for you. It's with a man named Senator Joe Lieberman. You're headed to DC. So that was a Thursday. The next day I was on a Greyhound bus to Washington, DC. And so I arrive in a place where I don't want to be, right? And this really is sort of the main idea of the passage from 2020. I mean, none of us really on December 31st of 2019 projected that this is what the year would look like, but here we are. And so I'm in DC. I don't really want to be there. But the fortunate thing about that experience is that I'm there for September 11th, and I get this education in public policy and in governance that I could not have gotten at any other point in history. And so I spend 2 years, I'm constantly reapplying to law school. Year number 2, I get waitlisted. Year number 3, I get waitlisted. Year 4, I get waitlisted. So I go to the Kennedy School of Government to get my master's in public policy. And my mother calls me up and she says, Daron, listen, you know I love you, right? And so I pause and I say, well, you gave birth to me. Yeah, that makes sense. You do love me. I understand that. She says, well, I don't know how to tell you this, but I don't think Harvard Law School wants you. I was like, oh, shot to the chest. I was like, Mom, my mom was an elementary school principal. And so I said, look, when you walk through your school, you have these great signs on the wall, reach for the stars and you can do it and keep your face to the sunshine. And my mom says, yes, son, that's for young people. You're not young anymore. And so you just need to go to law school somewhere. So roughly 3 months after that call, I get a call from a lady by the name of Joyce P. Curl. And she says, Daron, this is Joyce P. Curl. I said, yes, ma'am. I feel like we're pen pals. I've received your annual letter. She says, well, Daron, if I offer you the last seat in the class of 2007, will you take it? I say yes. So I walk onto the campus of Harvard Law School in 2004, a class of 550. On campus, we have Navy SEALs, we have former Miss Americas, and you've got this kid from East Texas. I am somewhat enjoying law school as much as anyone can. And in the summer before I was to graduate from law school, a buddy of mine, one of my good high school friends, was a coach in Pflugerville, Texas, just north of Austin, and he was going to the Steve Spurrier football camp at the University of South Carolina. And he said, look, if you've got some time before your semester starts, let's just take a ride. You'll come up with me to this camp. You don't have to do anything. We'll be there for 3 days. It'll be a good opportunity for us to catch up. So we ride to Columbia, South Carolina. The first night before camp is to begin, I'm sitting in a room and the head coach walks out and he says, welcome all coaches. I'm so glad to have you here. There's only one problem. One of our assistant volunteer coaches did not show up. And so we're looking for volunteers. Could anyone fill in for this spot? So I'm looking to my left and my right, and it was 2006. So I had a BlackBerry at the time. So I'm kind of thumbing through my BlackBerry and I'm thinking to myself, well, I was an all-district strong safety back in Mount Pleasant. I'm sure I can do this, right? I said, I know a little football. So I raised my hand. And Coach Spurrier says, Coach, what's your name? I said, Coach Roberts. He says, Coach Roberts, pleasure to meet you. He says, all right, Coach, what do you coach? So the plot thickens. So I was a defensive back in high school. I said, defensive backs. He said, defensive backs. That's great, Daron. Coach Roberts. He says, listen, you've got group 6. Now, I had absolutely no clue what this man was talking about. Group 6 consisted of 60 sixth graders, none of whom had any athletic talent whatsoever. Okay, so these were kids who'd received this gift of camp from a parent, and they couldn't backpedal for 5 yards. They could not run in a straight line. And fortunately for them, they had a coach who wasn't a coach. I couldn't coach at all. I was watching YouTube videos at night, trying to get tips and strategies. Went to Walmart the night before and I got a bucket cap and I got a whistle and some sunglasses and tried to play the part. But I noticed something over the course of those 3 days at the camp. And what I noticed was that it was the first time in my life that I did not have to set my alarm clock to get up. All right. And I want you to think as you're navigating through life, there will be these moments in which you are in an environment or you're on a team or you're working deep within a project. And there's some motivation, some impetus to get up, to stay up late, to work on this thing. And it's going to be unlike any other experience that you've ever had before. And so one of the important things is to constantly take a personal inventory of what are the things that I'm doing right now that light me up. And when I asked myself that question in July of 2006, it was coaching. So I go back to Harvard Law School. I pick up the phone and I said, Mom, I want to be a football coach. My mom says, oh, that's great, honey. That's wonderful. Do you think your law firm's going to let you do that sort of as a pro bono project? And I said, well, Mom, that wasn't what I was thinking. I want to coach full time. So she says, okay, let me put your dad on the phone. So the Reverend Kurt Roberts, Baptist minister, East Texas, jumps on the phone and says, Daron, what is this I hear about you wanting to be a football coach? I said, Dad, look, I worked this camp. He said, yeah, okay. He goes, listen, I have one question for you. Do you know how much debt you're in? All right, so I'll give you the math, and I'm sure many of you are mathematicians out there, so it'll be easy for you to crunch the numbers on this. I spent 5 years at Harvard, each year $50K. So 5 times 50, $250,000. I was $250,000 in debt. And my dad said, "No, listen, the deal was we would pay for undergrad, but you were going to be on the hook for grad and law school." And I said, "Dad, I've been thinking about this, and I received an academic full ride to go to Texas. And, by my very crude accounting, it looks as if you and mom owe me around $63,427 and about 92 cents. So as you can imagine, this did not go over well. My dad, in the fashion of a Baptist minister, says, "Well, let's pray." And so we pray. And he hangs up the phone. And so I go into law school knowing that I'm going to graduate, but I also know that I am going to become a coach. So I write a letter to every team in the NFL. There are 32 of them. I received 31 rejections. So the Patriots, the Chargers, the Cowboys, 31 teams say no. And finally, I get my first yes. And my first yes, and only yes, was from a man named Herm Edwards, who was the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs. He jumps on the phone. He says, "Daron, listen, what's wrong with you?" I said, "Well, nothing that's been documented. I work this camp. I want to coach." He goes, "Yeah, I don't read my mail, but I happen to read your letter. Here's the deal. I'm going to bring you in as a training camp intern. There will be no pay, no benefits, and you're going to work 18-hour days." And I said, "Sign me up." So I walked across the stage June the 7th of 2007, took my diploma from Elena Kagan, jumped in my 2002 Tahoe, which I still drive, and drove from Cambridge, Massachusetts to Kansas City, Missouri. I was the grunt. If the offensive lineman needed barbecue sandwiches, I was their guy. I cleaned chalkboards. I picked up cones. I did this for 6 months and was able to finally get on as a grunt coach, a defensive quality control coach with the Kansas City Chiefs, Detroit Lions, West Virginia Mountaineers, and my final stop was with America's team. You all know it, the Cleveland Browns. All right, and I get to Cleveland, and we're on a 3-year deal. We went 4-12, which, if you're a Cleveland Browns fan, in retrospect, that's a great year. But the owner walked in after the last game of the season and said, "You're all fired." So I went home and I'm scrambling eggs. My oldest son was 3 at the time, and he walks over and he says, "You ate breakfast?" So look, okay, I've just been fired. I ignore the kid. I keep scrambling. Kid comes back, resilient fella. He goes, "You eat breakfast?" So I turn to my wife. So what is he talking about, Hillary? And she turns to me and she says, "Well, when was the last time you had breakfast with Dylan?" All right. When was the last time you had breakfast with Dylan? 9 words that changed the trajectory of my life. So I decided I needed to stop because I was getting up at 4 a.m., getting home on a good night at 11 p.m., slept at the office 2 nights a week. And the irony was I was spending all of my time with other people's sons, and my own son didn't know me. So I come back to the University of Texas, created a Center for Sports Leadership and Innovation. We're housed in the president's office. I teach a class to every freshman athlete that teaches leadership principles, best practices, and also financial literacy. And half of the seats in that class, and we kick off tomorrow with 163 students, half of those seats, so 82 of those seats, are reserved for non-student athletes. So what we do here is we want to bring down those barriers between athletes and non-athletes, and we want to be able to train both groups to become effective leaders and to also leave the university with some financial acumen that can help them get on their feet. We work with NFL teams, other college teams. We're in 120 high schools around the country. And one of the things that I research, and I actually teach a class on this, I teach classes on innovation. I have a seminar this semester on rejection. It's called Rejection Immunity. So what's the research behind how you can grow your immunity against rejection? But also risk taking. And so when we think about the art of risk taking, I'm just going to focus on three traits. Three traits that when you look at the volume of risk takers and what the research shows us, here are three traits, and some of them may be unlikely, but these are the three traits that I think you need to embrace as innovators, as entrepreneurs, as budding entrepreneurs, right? Wherever you are on this educational and entrepreneurial journey, here are three traits. Number one, humility. Humility. So when we think about rejection, one of the things that we're finding in the research is that when people are able to separate themselves from the enterprise, they're able to withstand rejection more. And this is what I mean. You create a startup, and so you've got this thing. You and your co-founder have been working on this thing for months, maybe years. And so you do the roadshow and you start going to pitches, right? And you start to try to get VC funding, and you're going to walk in and you're going to make 50 pitches. Well, more than likely, you're going to experience at least a 90%, maybe a 95% rejection rate. And one of the things that helps entrepreneurs move on to the next pitch with success is having the humility to say, I am different from the thing that I do, right? There's this thing called identity foreclosure. And sometimes we think, well, I'm an entrepreneur. And so what an entrepreneur does is he or she builds successful stuff, right? He or she builds things that sell, that help humanity, that go into the marketplace, that makes the world a better place. The problem is that we don't focus on the iterative nature of entrepreneurship, right? And so the humility says, listen, I am a separate individual from this enterprise that I'm taking on. And so any rejection that I may receive, they're not rejecting me as a person. They may be rejecting some aspect of this innovation, okay? And one of the most critical things to do to really help bounce back from rejection is to ask for feedback. And this is one of the things why I really do embrace the entrepreneurial ecosystem, is because built inside of it is this feedback loop, right? So you pitch, judges give you feedback. Some judges will go offline via email or DM or Zoom and give you even a deeper level of feedback. But always, always, always ask for more, right? So don't concentrate on the fact that there is this small slice of the innovation that maybe didn't resonate with some of the judges, but go and dig deeper and say, hey, listen, if we did this, what do you think about that, right? Like, what are some ways do you think that we can fill this gap? So humility says, listen, I am in this iterative process. I'm going to embrace beta. So I'm constantly in a changing and a learning environment, and I'm going to embrace beta. And I'm going to have the humility to say, if I ever encounter rejection in this space, I'm not going to take it personal. I am going to ask for feedback, because this is the way that we can make the thing better. And I don't care what vertical you're in, what sector you're playing in, this is a tried and true method for reaching a successful outcome. Number two, agility. 2020 is the year for agility. Listen, when I received the email from the University of Texas that spring break would be extended for another week, I thought, okay, that's kind of odd. You know, we were still getting a lot of conflicting information about what was happening in the world. Then my kid's school did the same thing. Then the next email I get from the dean is, be prepared to go online starting April 1. And I thought to myself, the thing that I love the most about teaching is being in the classroom, right? I like the smell of a classroom. I like to walk up and down the aisle. I like to roll my sleeves up. I'm a low PowerPoint guy, more discussion. So I like the interaction that comes with the classroom. And I thought to myself, how am I going to get that fix from an online platform? All right. But I had to remain agile. I had to learn Zoom. I had to get in and work through kinks. And so agility is one of those necessary traits when you're talking about risk taking, because one has to have the ability to not be too indebted or too in love with the current version of what you're creating, right? And this is one of the things that I advise 3 startups at the moment. I've advised probably over 10 during the course of my career. And one of the things is you find this what I call founders fidelity. So founders have this baby and you've worked on it midnight, 3 a.m., weekends, you skipped parties for this thing. And so you become so in love with how it looks and how it feels and how it feels and how it works right now that you're resistant to change. Agility is a necessary component. And when we kind of go beneath the surface and look at what does agility really encompass, it's this ability to assess, adapt, and advance. So assess the situation. The market's changed. I mean, look around us at the marketplace. Look how consumer behavior has changed dramatically over the course of the last 4 months. There are people who swore they would never get groceries delivered from HEB, and now this is the only way that they get their food. All right. So there are massive changes in consumer behavior, and the successful enterprises have been able to sort of peek down the road and say, based on the trends and what we're seeing, we are going to pivot in this direction. So we're going to assess what's going on in the marketplace. We're going to adapt our product or our service to fit that need, and then we're going to advance. And here's what I mean by advance. In this constantly changing environment, right? And so we've gone 10x in terms of the speed with which you need to get to market. You may not have the time to test it for the 38th time, right? And this is going to bring me to my last point, right? The last trait. First was humility. Second was agility. And then I want to come to empathy, because empathy is one of those traits that we think about sort of in the social space. So how our relationships work in terms of empathy and being able to empathize with someone. But if you're in business, if you're an entrepreneur, empathy has to be one of those traits at the top of your list, because the only way that you are going to identify what the market needs and wants is you're going to have to be able to put on your empathy hat and say, okay, let me get into the mind of my target customer. Let me think through, what does he or she need? What are the pain points associated with this sector? That is an empathetic practice, right? Empathy also calls for active listening, and this is something that I found that in the world of business, this is one of those qualities that I feel like is in short supply. I'll be honest with you. Oftentimes we want to sound smart, and this is not, I'm just not talking about college students, but this is from the college student all the way up to the CEO. So I coach 7 executives right now, all C-suite executives, and all of them, they're in different sectors, different verticals, right? Different market caps, but all of them struggle with this desire to get it right and to show that they know what they're doing at every single turn. And I'll briefly talk about vulnerability. I mean, there's an empowering element to vulnerability when you come into your mentor or your professor, right? Or to a customer and say, I don't understand this. Help me understand it, right? I saw you on the platform, but you left after 32 seconds. What was missing about that experience, right? Or you're in class and it could be a finance class, it could be MIS, it could be science, it could be liberal arts, right? All of these classes will come to bear on this on what you do. But the empathetic lens will walk up after class or send a message for a virtual session after class and say, Professor, you made this point and I really want to make sure I understand it. Would you mind phrasing it in a different way, right? Can we follow up on this point? And so empathy, which dovetails with the humility, says, I am going to give people the ownership of the experience, right? I'm going to actively listening. I'm going to actively listen, which is separate from waiting to talk, because a lot of the research shows that people who are a lot of people who are silent, they think they're listening, but what they're actually doing is they're already trying to build a response and they're just waiting for silence in order to talk. But really quieting the mental chatter and say, okay, I want to really understand this viewpoint. I want to really understand how I can make this better. I'm going to actively listen and try to put myself in the shoes of the customer, of my mentor, of my friend, of my co-founder. So the art of risk taking, I'll just wrap up here and kind of give you a brief recap. Humility, agility, and empathy. And the one thing I want to say is they have a bad rap, because these all three would be considered by most people to fall into the soft skills category, right? I know that, some of you are technical in nature, and so you may feel yourself inclined to focus in your coursework, right? And in the educational, you'll learn different things outside of the classroom. And you may find yourself wanting to say, okay, I'm going to focus on the technical piece. Let me get the code right. Let me make sure that the spreadsheets are in order. But I found this, the soft skills are really the hardest things to learn. And they're even harder to put into practice. And when you look at why great companies, why great startups fail, it's one of two things. One is, for some reason, there's some product market fit, right? We thought we had it right. We put it into the marketplace. There's no traction. The other problem is this. We created this thing without having the humility, the agility, and the empathy to craft something that was going to fit the demands of the people that we want to help. So I'm excited for questions. This is going to be the fun part. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much, and I'm ready to take questions as they come in.
Hi, Daron. Thanks. We've got a lot of questions, and we'll get to as many as we can in the limited time that we have available. Excuse me, but I'm going to lead with this after I choke. Your mom encouraged you to move on from Harvard Law School. If she hadn't, do you think you would have done that on your own? Would you have pursued it anyway? When do you know when it's time to move on from something you've set as a goal?
Yeah, if I had a top 10 list of questions asked to Daron, probably on number 5, I think it's a great question, would be, how do you know when to stop? I think it's a great question. And I'm going to, in the typical vein of a liberal arts professor, tell you there's no answer. But this is what I want to say. I'm going to give you some factors, because there's really no great calculus for when you should say stop. I mean, there are multiple startups for whom if they didn't go one more month, right, then they're just close enough to get some market traction. And so, but you can't predict that in the present tense. Here's what I want to say in terms of the factors you should think about. Always go back to why. All right, and I don't want to get too Simon Sinek-ish on you, but go back to the why. And this is important, because really dig deep and excavate, why are you pursuing this thing? I'll tell you my experience in teaching over 1,900 students at the University of Texas. Oftentimes, the ventures that I see that young people, college students are taking on, whether it's a major or an enterprise, is because mom and dad or grandma or the mentor back in my hometown said I would be really good at this, or that I should try to do this, right? And so I force students to really unpack, what is the why? If your why, in your own estimation, right? This is a question that only you can answer. If your why is true to yourself, if your why is disconnected from outcome, but more oriented toward the journey and the process, this could be an indicator that you need to keep going. I would also say this, always evaluate, have you exhausted the options, right? So I think one of the things that I see from people who make early exits, right, whether it's in life, in business, is that they haven't exhausted all of the options. Have you recruited as many people who could give you the intel and the support that you need to get this thing going? When I applied to Harvard Law School 4 years, here are the things that I did. Every year, I got 3 more additional recommendations. One year, I flew to Cambridge and I sat outside of the admissions office for a day before they kicked me out. I rewrote my personal statement 4 times, different personal statement each year. Any update that I had, whether I spoke at the Kiwanis Club or got a promotion when I was working on the Hill, I used that as an excuse to send an update to the admissions committee. So I felt as if I was exhausting all the options. And the one thing I would say, I'm not sure what my calculus would have been had they told me no, but the fact that I got a wait list letter, and the wait list letter really is analogous to, in life, wait, right? Like you need to make a few more changes. That's the way that I interpret it. And so if you're getting feedback that you're getting close and there are some small tweaks that you can make, I say keep going. But that decision is personal. It's tough. I wish I had a spreadsheet for it, but I wish all of you well in that endeavor because it's a difficult decision to make. Great question. Thank you.
Okay, Daron, if you ever do come up with a spreadsheet or formula, please make sure we're on your distribution list for that.
I'll share it. I'll quit my job. I'll be done for that.
Great. Okay, so let's move on. We've got a lot of questions. So what were some of the biggest mistakes or lessons that you learned that have impacted your viewpoint or your way of looking at things?
Yeah, big mistakes or viewpoints. I was from Mount Pleasant, Texas, and the town was split between Latinos, Blacks, and whites. And when I came to the University of Texas, as you can imagine, my worldview expanded exponentially. One of the things that I think hampered me early on was that I was genuinely surprised when people didn't believe or think the way that I did. And I think that this is something that we're seeing in our world right now, where America is finally grappling with race. You know, this is a 400-year-old issue that the country has never quite reconciled. And the effects are dissension and just an incredible amount of turmoil. So I think one of those mistakes was me believing that people believed what I believe. So I would say always stay open-minded. I would also say that I think I went too fast too often. So when you're young, you know, you're running on all cylinders and you really think that the sleepless nights and the 7-day-a-week schedule is sustainable. And the research shows that, you know, people in your age group, you need sleep and you need to eat good food and you need to move 30 minutes a day, just like the 40-year-olds like myself, 41-year-olds like myself, right? So I would say that I wish I was more intentional about the self-care at an earlier age, because I think that would have given me even more professional stamina to do the work that I was doing. Great questions. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so this is probably in your top 10 list of questions. But what are some of the successful habits that you notice in successful entrepreneurs?
Great question. Successful traits from successful entrepreneurs. I find that successful entrepreneurs tend to have interest outside of their sector or domain. The most successful entrepreneurs that I have been in contact with, they may be working on a very particularized piece of code or startup in one space, but they're constantly looking outside of their bubble to see if there are connections to be made that can help them do what they do. And this is one of the reasons why I was a liberal arts undergrad major. I told you I teach in liberal arts, and I constantly tell all of my business school students, you need to find some way to incorporate this liberal arts education into your work, because the problems that you're dealing with aren't new, and things like history and literature can inform the way that you solve problems in the technical space. So that's one thing. They have this roving intellectual curiosity. Entrepreneurs, the successful entrepreneurs, have a roving entrepreneurial or intellectual curiosity that allows them to pick up on insights quicker than I think other people who are in their space. I'll stop at that one.
That's great, because I've noticed that even in the work that we do at the Institute. So let's move on. Do you see yourself as a better mentor or a better entrepreneur?
Am I a better mentor or entrepreneur? I'll say a quick thing on mentorship. We throw the term around quite a bit. I think that there needs to be a lot of intentionality around as you select mentors. I think your mentor needs to know that he or she is your mentor. And I mean, I don't want to get too formal, but I have some templates that I share with students in which I say, once you determine you want to have this long-lasting professional relationship with someone, you need to let them know what you see and what you admire and set expectations. Would it be okay if I had a monthly call with you to just update you on what I'm working on, right? It's also a two-way street. So the best mentees that I have are bringing content to me in my space. They're not just concerned about what they're working on, but they're forwarding newspaper articles, they're forwarding books to me that they know would be of interest to me because they want to add value and not just be in a position to take value. I do both. I'm not sure if I'm better at one or the other, but I will say they're two very different hats. And the main takeaway would be very intentional about letting people know which hat you're wearing or which hat you would like someone else to wear as you encounter them.
Oh, great. That's great advice. Okay, so we're going to dovetail off of that a little bit. And the next question would be, how would you advise people go about finding or identifying a mentor?
Yes. First, I would say stop looking. Okay, I know that sounds counterintuitive. Don't look for the mentor. The first thing you should do is look within yourself, and this takes an honest personal inventory. You have to do an honest assessment of where you think your gaps are. Is it your work ethic? Is it your discipline? Is it your technical expertise? What do you need help on, right? And be honest, right? Because I think sometimes we kind of will give ourselves, we always tend to grade ourselves on a curve. Be honest and say, look, here are my strengths, here are my weaknesses. I think the best mentors complement the weaknesses. So maybe your communication isn't what you would hope that it would be. Those skills are lacking. So I'm first trying to determine where my gaps are. And then as I'm meeting people and interacting with people, I'm just going to keep this mental checklist in the back of my brain that says, wow, I really like the way that she gave that presentation, or I love the way that she writes her quarterly reports, or the way she writes her updates to investors. There's a communication element there. I would love to see if I could recruit her as my mentor. I think that's important. I think the old school way of, this was pre-2020 where you just went to all the networking events and you tried to collect as many business cards as possible. The data shows that 76% of the people who get a business card don't follow up via email, definitely not snail mail, but it feels good to say I've got 30 business cards when I come back home. Those days are over for several reasons, right? COVID related. But I think it's also an incredible opportunity for you to be able to scale your interactions. So the fact that you can sit in your dorm room and have 3 or 4 Zooms per day for maybe 15 minutes at a minimum, right? That's an opportunity, and it's more, it's closer contact than being at the networking event with that cheesy music playing in the background and the people walking around with hors d'oeuvres. It's actually in a lot of ways more intimate from a professional standpoint than those settings. So I would look at ways to kind of capitalize on that. Last thing I'm going to say is this. When you're approaching mentors, more than likely, if you want them to be your mentor, they are busy people. Manage their expectations. The best emails that I get say, I would want a 20-minute call or a 15-minute call. The default is an hour or 30, and I think it's easy for us to say, I may not have enough time. But when someone says 20 minutes, I'm like, I've got 20 minutes, right? So from that quality we mentioned, empathy, empathize with the person that you're talking with, and really put yourself in their shoes.
Great, Daron. We're going to pivot a little bit. I know a little bit ago you mentioned that one of the ways to, I don't know, kind of approach a risk is to disconnect yourself from the thing that you're doing. So it goes along with what you said about rejection. You are not the thing that you do. So taking that a little bit further, how would you advise people overcome the fear of risk taking, in addition to what you alluded to earlier, just with regards to one of those great traits that people have when they're successful?
Yeah, I think, if you want to get over the fear of risk taking, understand a couple of things. This is the cost of doing business, right? So oftentimes we find in the research that people who their number one fear with risk taking is rejection. I don't get the funding, I don't get the job, I don't get the spouse, the partner, right? So this fear of risk taking extends beyond the business technical entrepreneurial space. So the first thing is to say, listen, it's just a part of life. We tend to think in a silo and think, we're getting rejected, and so it becomes very personal. And I talked about kind of separating yourself, your identity from the thing. But just know that this happens to everyone. Also understand this. If you go on my LinkedIn page, I'm just Daron K. Roberts. I posted something that's called a rejection resume. So it's an inverted resume. I listed under education, every school I was rejected from. Employment, every job I didn't get. Honors and awards, every honor and award that I didn't receive. And this is something that I practice that I do with a lot of my coaching clients. And also, this is an assignment in one of my classes. And I think what's great about really detailing your rejections is that at the end of the experience, you look up and you say, I'm still alive, right? Like in the present tense of rejection, it is one of the most difficult things to withstand. And the research also shows that undergoing rejection is akin to getting punched, right? So the same neural response that you have from physical pain, those same neurons are triggered when you have rejection, all right? So this is difficult, and I don't mean to downplay it, but take a step back, have something that you do whenever you meet rejection. There's a professor at BYU. The first thing he does when he gets rejected from a scholarly journal is he says, okay, this afternoon I'm going fishing. And it's like, I'm going to get in a different context. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to relax. So healthy separation, like being intentional about saying, let me step away from it because my identity is not wrapped up in rejection, helps quite a bit.
That's great. Okay, so we have a lot of questions about this.
I'll go faster.
Rejection. This one is there a way to differentiate between a good risk and a bad one? If so, what are the factors that you would consider?
Yeah, are you going to die? I say that. I always say, I'll post on Twitter, but did you die? That's the tweet. Did you die? And I always say, look, if you're not going to experience a high probability of death or commit a crime, I think we should really consider the opportunity, right? And I think oftentimes, and this is how the brain works, our brains are wired for preservation. Homeostasis is your brain's best friend, right? And so things that are going to increase your anxiety and your stress, the brain wants to keep you away from it. And so you'll find these self-defeating stories pop up when you say, I'd love to ask her to be a co-founder on this idea. Well, then the brain says, well, but you're not really technical enough, or you had a B in econ, or right. And so these self-defeating stories come up. And so one of the most important things is just to say, look, here's the thing about risk. It's non-predictable, right? It's an unpredictable thing. So the best thing you can do, and I'll wrap it up, the best thing you can do is to take as much information about the opportunity as possible, right? This is where I say you got to get into your Excel mode. Pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses, gaps, map this thing out. have as much information as readily available, and then make the best move given the information. And if it doesn't go your way, such as life, you'll iterate and move on to the next one.
Oh, that's good stuff. Okay, we're going to switch gears a little bit. How do you go about maintaining your passion when the weight of financial stress piles on?
Oh, this is a great question. And I am, in a time where student debt is an all-time high. This is an important consideration. So, a couple of things. I would say do what you can while you can, and this is what I mean. I would really look at your own spending practices, right? So you're in school, you may be on scholarship, you may have taken out loans. You may be working, you may be work study. I know there are a lot of different sort of factors to take into account. And so the first thing you have to do is make sure that your basic needs are met. Like, this is a very Maslowian, make sure your basic needs are met. And then after that, I would really encourage you all to look at your ATM and your credit card statements and really walk through your purchases. Now, a lot of you are it's a check to check sort of game, and so you're doing the best that you can. I really wish, going back to regrets, I really wish I had been a lot more intentional with my spending practices as an undergraduate, because you will find some things that small tweaks that could really help you to be in a better financial position than you have been before. So maybe saying, I'm just going to eat out once per week. I remember my senior year, we were running like 4 or 5 times a week, right? I look back at myself, I'm like, that's good, right? To be able to spend time with friends, but really diagnose your purchasing habits and be honest about whether or not you're willing to tweak them in order to save more capital. This stress, I think also just remember that going through the educational system is going to give you so many benefits that you can't fit inside of a spreadsheet. That's the end goal, and I know that you'll be getting statements on a quarterly basis, and so it can be really stress-inducing. But just remember that this is an investment that's going to have a long-term impact, and do what you can to get through each day. Thank you.
That's good advice for absolutely everyone. Okay, how do you manage people who try to pull you in different directions when you're trying to be hyper-focused on a clear path, while at the same time keeping them around because you'll need to dive into that business area in the future during your growth?
So look, this is the issue of how to say no. And this is what I want to say is that, typically what I believe is that as a young person, you should be saying yes more than no. Right? So this is your period. This is your it's the Chinese buffet period of your lives where you pay $9.99, you walk in and you can have your run of the place, right? Eat until you're full. So you're going to say yes to some things. Maybe you don't like a certain dish. Who cares? Go back and get something else. So I think there's a curve to where you're saying yes a lot to opportunities at a young age. There will be a point to where hopefully there is this small space that you want to be really good at, and this is where you have to turn up the dial on your nose, right? Because the limiting factor is time. And so once you find whatever that thing is, you've got to be willing to tell people no. Let's say, for example, you found it right now, like this thing you're working on, this is what you want to do. Kindly tell people no. So if anyone asks me to do something, I say, listen, I really appreciate the opportunity. At this time, I am working feverishly to complete a manuscript for a book. This is scheduled for completion in December of this year. I know this may not work with your timeline, but if there's a way I can add value in the future, please let me know, right? So you want to thank them for the opportunity, but you also want to, in a very subliminal way, just kind of let them know, I'm working on this thing. And I've told you, I can tell you this, that method alone, you would think, oh, well, it'll distance me from people. They won't circle back. People respect when you tell them that you're really working on something that's going to take up a majority of your time. And most of the people that I've had experience with will circle back for future opportunities. So don't be afraid to say no. This is a trait that I think a lot of adults wish that they were better at. A lot of the coaching that I do revolves around trying to help adults be able to say no the right way.
That's a great answer. Okay, so now you spoke a little bit, Daron, about your impetus for leaving coaching and then, moving into another sector. You wanted breakfast with your kids who didn't even know you had breakfast. So how did you pivot from coaching in the NFL to being an entrepreneurial consultant?
Yeah, so the first pivot for me was when I said I'm going to stop coaching. I really went back and I said, what are the things that light me up as a human? Right. This is a question that I really implore all of you to put up on your wall, make it a screensaver. Like, what lights me up? And when I did a deep dive into myself, speaking, writing, and teaching, those are the three things that fill me up and light me up on a daily basis. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go and try to teach. I had been teaching football for 7 years, but I said, let me go into the classroom. So I reached out to contacts from the University of Texas. There were faculty members who were still there from my time as an undergrad. Asked, got a few no's, and finally was able to get on as a lecturer. So I think really taking a deep dive and saying, what do I like to do? And chasing those things first. I think our default proposition becomes, what's the easiest thing for me to transition into? That's a different question, because we'll say, oh, well, I'm an accountant, so I can go this route, instead of saying, no, a transition is an opportunity for me to make a big time pivot. This is an opportunity for me to really dive deeper into what it is that lights me up. Let me chase those opportunities first. And then if the bank's going to come and take my house, or I can't feed my kids, or I don't have enough money to put into my car, I may take something else, but let me exhaust these opportunities in the areas of the things that light me up first. Don't settle too early.
Great. Okay, we have time for one last question, Daron. I just want to assure the people that we don't get to their questions, that we will track down answers for you and get in touch, and we'll post them later. But here's our last. What has been your biggest success in life, and how did you take it?
Biggest success in life. My oldest son just turned 10, and his birthday is August 19th. August 19th stands out to me because in, let me do the math here, in 2010, that was also the date of our first training camp game. I was coaching with the Detroit Lions. We had a preseason game versus the Denver Broncos, at Denver, mind you, at Denver. For 3 weeks, I toiled. Mental anguish was on me constantly, and I thought, like, what do I do? And I remember my dad saying to me, you're going to coach for another team, but you're always going to be the father of Dylan. And we already knew that we were going to name him Dylan. We knew he was a boy, and that stuck with me. And so I would say the biggest success for me has been not settling when it comes to family. And there have been times, I wasn't the father or the husband that I should have been as a coach, but there have been times where you're going to be in a position where some opportunity is going to really test how much are you willing to give up for the people around you. Always choose the people. I always choose the people, because the one thing that I will say is that I found in life that titles, promotions make for very poor traveling companions, but it's the people who you care about and who care about you the most, that's what endures. So go out there and crush it in the entrepreneurial scene, make this world a better place. If you look around you, you can tell that we need you. And I'm going to say this also again, just one last point. Mark Andreessen wrote this article. It said it's time to build, right? He talked about it's time to build. This was back in April, and he talked about sort of how we arrived in 2020. I don't agree with all of his statements, but I think his thesis is right. It is time to build. And not just in the entrepreneurial space, but in the social space, issues like race and gender and immigration, like there are so many problems that we need to solve. And I'm just excited to see the solutions that all of you create that will help us to make positive progress in those areas. So thank you so much, Denise. One last thing I want to say. One last thing. Any question you want to ask me, if you send an email to me, and I promise you I'll do this. If you send an email to me, coachdkr@coachdkr.com. So coachdkr@coachdkr.com. If you send a succinct question to me, I will send a voice file back to you with my response. So thank you so much for having me, Denise. This is back to you, Dresden. I appreciate the opportunity. I've had a blast. Thank you.
Daron, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your inspiration with us today. We loved learning about the art of risk-taking and just really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. So now that we're nearing the end of our program, we thought we would top it off with a special announcement. Let's check in with Joshua Baer, the founder and CEO of Capital Factory, and Dr. Joseph Pancrazio, the VP for Research at UT Dallas. Take it away, Joshua.
Great, well, thank you. Capital Factory is the center of gravity for entrepreneurs in Texas, and Texas is the #1 state for startups in the US. Thousands of entrepreneurs, programmers, and designers gather day and night in person and online for meetups, classes, and co-working. And with boots on the ground in Austin, Dallas, and Houston, we meet the best entrepreneurs in Texas and introduce them to their first investors, employees, mentors, and customers. According to PitchBook, Capital Factory has been the most active early stage investor in Texas since 2010. Now, we've always had strong relationships with universities to do that. But UT Dallas is the first member of the Capital Factory Innovation Council, which includes big companies like Amazon Web Services, Baker Botts, Deloitte, IBM, and Microsoft. And Capital Factory already had deep ties to UTD. Brian Chambers, he started at UTD, but now he's at Capital Factory too. And Steve G started at Capital Factory, but now he's at UTD. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find any investor who's co-invested in more deals with the UTD seed fund than we have. Companies like ShareShare, Tanky, Callbox, and Zabo. We have shared values and culture around STEM and diversity and inclusion, making UT Dallas an ideal partner to work with as we continue to engage in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and bringing what they're doing downtown. So we're excited to learn from UTD, to learn about the new and emerging technologies they're developing there, and help bridge the amazing talent pipeline at UTD into the business community, into the Texas startup and venture ecosystem. And so with that, I'm going to hand it off to Joe. But Joe, we need to get you some startup swag. You're dressed like a university professor. Let me give you a startup T-shirt to put on while you're talking here. Hold on.
Okay, I'll see where to reach it. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Josh. Wow. It's the university established a strategic plan the last few years, and one element is to advance research, and the other is to become an economic engine for the region. We see Capital Factory as being an essential partner for being able to realize that strategic goal. It's evident that Capital Factory shares our values. You hit on a number of those amazing points in terms of diversity and inclusion and STEM. It's the fact, though, that you have the best mentor and investor network in Texas, and it's a model not only for the surrounding area, but for the country and the world. We see our engagement with Capital Factory to be a critical enabler for successfully commercializing all sorts of innovations that are developed through university research, as well as launching new startups that come out of the university ecosystem. So in the future, the downtown location is essential. It fits our name. We are the University of Texas at Dallas, and being able to have access to Capital Factory downtown and have a presence there is going to make all sorts of university programs like UT Design as well as our Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, perhaps a Center for Applied Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning, all sorts of different organizations within the university have a presence downtown to engage. We're really excited, Josh, and I'm very proud to be wearing this t-shirt today. Thanks a lot.
You're looking good. You're looking good. With the power, when we bring together the amazing talent and technologies of UTD with the incredible innovation of the entrepreneurs in Texas, I don't know. I think there's nothing we can't do. Give me a high five.
Right.
Boom.
What an exciting announcement. We are so looking forward to all of the great opportunities that will come out of this partnership between UT Dallas and Capital Factory. And this concludes our Idea Pop event for fall 2020. So we hope you all have a great fall semester. Thank you so much for tuning in.